no one's dumb enough not to make it work.
He wanted execs who would listen more and not jump on keywords.
You should never let the tail wag the dog. Disproportionately decrease your cost of acquisition and decrease your cost of servicing. There are incumbent individuals or teams within the banks whose livelihoods dependent on the old business model.
Vendor sprawl in banking.
Do I build this myself or do I buy something from external? It takes anywhere between 30 to 40 vendors to pull it together. Truly get best-in-class point solutions for every single component of a banking stack.
Which works really well for you when you're the vendor. That is a big execution risk. Why would you not start from a place where everything is best in class? Hi, welcome back to the third part of our conversation with Kelvin Tan, CEO of AUDAX. We have had part one about his journey as an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur, and part two where we talked about BaaS. Really interesting parts. You ended part two on a very fiery statement. So I asked Kelvin, what is one thing you want to change? And he wanted execs who would listen more and not jump on keywords. Okay, now let's pick that up. You are doing a lot more than you were doing before. You're helping banking rewire and transform. Now we have a lot of execs who do listen to Regenus, based on the stats we see. How should execs be looking at digital transformation? Infrastructure replacement or business model change?
You should never let the tail wag the dog from a banking standpoint. Is there a business model, right? The pain point for banks globally is the fact that investors in banks are demanding a significantly enhanced return on equity on their balance sheet. Because most banks trade, 4 times book, 2 to 4 times book, give or take. If you had put the same money into Google, for example, it would be 12 times book.
Yeah.
Right? Or something close to that. So people are insisting, how do you, as a bank, create and increase the margin for me on a returns basis above my cost of capital? From that standpoint, the only way, the bank's business, at least today, is pretty, in most cases, I know I simplify it, it's more complex than that, but generally, they take money from deposits, they lend money from lending, and they make fees somewhere in between for services and various things.
Net interest income.
That's interest, and then there is fee. Then there are fees, right? And basically, a combination of the two. In the ideal world, the bank wouldn't make too much interest income and lots of fee income, because fee income does not attract return. It does not attract risk-weighted assets.
Yeah.
Right. But the reality is a lot of their income comes from net interest. Now, in order for that to happen, in order for return on equity on the business model like that to happen, you have to disproportionately decrease your cost of acquisition and decrease your cost of servicing for the same net interest income to be far more valuable on a returns basis. Right. This is basic mathematics. In order to do that, you definitely need to start thinking through a different kind of business model, the digitally enhanced business model for acquisition, embedded finance, banking as a service, open banking, for both retail and SME. And for corporates, there's a whole new universe around how exactly you do that for large corporates, which we haven't even touched on, in all honesty, at any scale. So when you think through what business model you want to pursue, back to your original question, then you think about, all right, what is it that I need to enable from a technology, from an infrastructure, from a process standpoint to create that business model in the cheapest, shortest possible timeline?
And this is a very insightful answer. So you're saying, look at the outcome you want and then look at what transformation you need to do this outcome. It sounds pretty simple and obvious as well. What is holding back banks from doing this simple step?
No, I don't think anything is holding back banks. Most people understand some of this. Two things. One, there is a mindset change required on exploring various business models. Not all banks have gotten there. Some banks are still pretty wired in their current view, right?
Yes.
Then you have to go through the secondary layer of, even if the senior execs believe that that's the right thing to do, then there are incumbent individuals or teams within the banks whose livelihoods are determinant or at least dependent on the old business model, and the new business model could change things from on that front. So you get internal white blood cell resistance from that perspective. Then you get into the details and the nuts and bolts of this equation of what exactly do you assess? What technology platform is available and adequate for that? And what are the key things that you need to look out for? Right? Which is where the white blood cells start having those conversations for those of them who feel differently about the transformation. So I actually don't think conceptually anyone disagrees, other than individuals who haven't gotten past the bump of understanding the world is evolving fast, that they do need to transform. It's the how, and it's the how that really gets into people.
Let me rephrase the question.
Yeah.
Everyone understands this. What is holding them back?
Like I said, mindset for some individuals and internal friction for other individuals.
Right. And now let's get a little bit closer to what you are doing. I am, first of all, great marketing, great LinkedIn strategy. You are such an energetic individual. I meet you wherever, I see you. I can recognize you in a crowd because you have this energy around you. You talk a lot about vendor sprawl in banking, limiting the vendor sprawl, etc., from 35 to 5. Let's break this down. Why does vendor sprawl happen even in the first place? Let's say there are new people who don't understand banking and fintech today. Why does vendor sprawl even occur in banking?
No. I think I need to clarify. I'm not against vendor sprawl.
Yeah.
I'm not. I think that when you want to go on a digital transformation journey or an enhancement journey or building a speedboat or running BEST, whatever, multiple use cases, you generally come down to three choices. The first choice, the first dichotomy is, do I build this myself or do I buy something from external? Now, if you build this yourself, we all know what this means. Banks have done it for years, decades. The risk of being internal facing, the risk of not understanding what's best in class, and so on and so forth. That's one. If you choose to buy, there are two ways to buy, which is one, what you call vendor sprawl. I mean, a technology stack for banking is pretty standard in terms of its components. You can change some parts, there are some enhancements required, but by and large, there are 6 or 7 layers, they are pretty uniform. Generally, it takes anywhere between 30 to 40 vendors to pull it together. You have one for KYC, you have one for IAM, you have one for your mobile app, you have one for your data infrastructure, you have one for your CRM, one for your product engine, your core banking system, so on and so forth. Or you go with a comprehensive box provider that has all of those components in a single application, which is what AUDAX does. Now, strategically, both approaches have merit. It's a trade-off, right? It's a trade-off in that the composable banking model, which is what the 30 vendor model is, allows for you to truly get best-in-class point solutions for every single component of a banking stack. It's great. The downside of that is cost. It's significant amount of cost and coordination and time and effort spent on coordination of a ton
and the risk of not working at all.
Well, they will work. It will work, right? A best-in-class point solution. At some point with technology, you invest enough, it will work.
Yeah.
I have no doubts about that. No one's dumb enough not to make it work. But your complexity of working through 30 vendors is immense. And the time and effort to onboard them, to get through security, integration, so on and so forth. Then on the other hand, you have a single application. So cost is much lower, TCO is much lower. The speed to market is generally higher because it's pre-integrated anyway, unless you want to pick and choose the components. And you can, the downside of that equation is then you become reliant largely on a single vendor.
which works really well for you when you're the vendor.
When I'm the vendor.
Yeah.
So from a bank's perspective, there's a trade-off to be made, right? You can either go with this or you can go with that. And I'm not saying either approach is wrong. I'm saying it's a strategic view of how things should be done.
Yeah.
On one hand, multiple components, complexity, but potentially best in class and no vendor lock-in. Well, at least no significant vendor lock-in. Your core banking vendor is obviously key. On the other hand, some vendor lock-in, not all, but significantly lower TCO, significantly faster time to market, flexibility to a large extent, right? So, yeah, trade-off.
It is a trade-off, and see, there is in the day job I do not something similar, but on a smaller scale something similar. Is that more and more players are levitating towards a combined solution coming to them.
Yep.
So while you are right, when you say the risk of all of this working is limited, but not the timelines can be unlimited. Because making all of these different systems talk, making sure all the workflows are going well, etc., that is a big execution risk. While it eventually might work, but you have to see what that eventually will be. So now, once you have built in this whole thing, why would you, as a player who's doing this solution, right? Not the 35 sprawl, vendor sprawl, but just the 5 one. Why would you not start from a place where everything is best in class?
Because do you really need everything to be best in class is the question that I ask, right? And because if you try to make everything best in class and build that solution, it's going to cost you your capex it's going to be crazy and it's going to take a very, very long time. You have large teams doing nothing but focusing. You need to remember when you have 30 vendors, each vendor is a company that does nothing but focus on that particular point solution. Whereas when you build something as a comprehensive end-to-end platform, you have to pick and choose where you focus your area, your expertise on, right? The key things in any bank, the reality is a best-in-class mobile app is not going to be the most important thing that changes. The UX, UI has to be configurable, has to be able to for the customer to be able to change their things. But a best-in-class pure front-end UI interface or a best-in-class back-end UI interface is not going to be the most important thing in the banking stack. So we focus our energies on specifically things that are important. Best-in-class data infrastructure that allows for the consolidation, the classification of the right data sets, not just for various use cases of real-time data reporting, CRM, customer interaction, cross-sell, but also the availability of the data in a clean manner for the implementation of AI models.
Yep.
Now, the implementation of AI today, while much vaunted and many people on LinkedIn are AI experts, the reality is, and I agree with this, by the way, Ned Lowe is a very good friend from Mission Plus. The implementation of AI today is a data problem.
Yes.
Because most banks don't have clean data.
Yep.
Right? And so we focus our efforts, back to the original question, on specific components that are key to the functioning of a bank at scale.
So that was an amazing answer. And I'll tell you, I say that is amazing because there are so many times we go in and we have these conversations and where everybody's like, oh, I need the best UX. First of all, UX is like a falling knife. You will never win. It is constantly going to keep reevaluating. Like, you build something today, it is going to be better tomorrow, etc. and stuff. So you're very right about that. Do you really need best in class? What is one thing you did that helped you define what should be best in class and what is okay to be good enough? How did you define that? How did you get there?
Oh, no, I worked. I found the right person to lead my product and technology team. Right? Matthias is deeply, deeply experienced in the space, and he understands what the pain points are for most of our customers, and therefore has focused our expertise in those specific areas.
So let me just build this up for you.
Yep.
So you look at what the customer is trying to achieve. Matthias, the product guy, looks at it and says, what needs to be best in class? What can be good? What can be average? You build this out. and then you go back to a customer and saying the cost of ownership of this TCO, total cost of ownership of this, would be much better than having all these 35 different point solutions talk to each other.
Exactly.
Great pitch. Talk to us about how the customers are looking at it. How are they evaluating you? What are their apprehensions when they look at this model? Because now you're playing in a space that I play in too. So I'm very keen to understand how are they reacting to this?
So the two things, most of our features are configurable. That allows for customers to pick and choose and play how and configure as they want. So that helps flexibility. We have an adaptive integration layer that really helps so we are agnostic to the core banking system if needed. We are agnostic to their party management. We are agnostic in infrastructure. Great. Actually, we spend most time with the customers on security, on compliance and security.
Yeah.
Right. Where they are concerned about, all right, how do we deal with CVEs? Right? How do we deal with vulnerabilities on the platform? How often do we update? How often do we patch? How do we do real-time scanning or 24, bots that run through the platform to scan through every single workflow? All of those questions are far more prevalent than the features. And the features are still prevalent. We still have to do some fixes and builds and whatever. But the biggest part of the conversation is around security and compliance.
Now, let's come back. Love the answer. Shows the maturity with which you and the team are building this product. Let's say I give you no holds bar access to a banking stack. What would it look like after AUDAX is done?
Well, let me clarify the question. Are you saying that after the bank has implemented AUDAX in their platform or in their environment, what would the bank look like?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, technically, the bank will have a extremely fast, extremely flexible, extremely scalable platform. And the bank could choose to use it in multiple ways. It could choose to launch a digital bank in 6 months. It could choose to launch BaaS if they get a partner on board quickly enough, 6 months. It could choose to participate in open banking in whichever market it is, or pioneer the open banking platform. And it could choose to run multiple data plays, like I talked about earlier in the earlier parts, whereby you aggregate data, you run cross-sell capabilities, you do customer insights, you do change underwriting capabilities, and so on and so forth. So basically, the world is the bank's oyster as long as their imagination takes them to what business models they can execute.
So you give them every capability to wipe out all of these fintechs who have been eating their lunches for all of these years.
I don't know if they will actually do it, because I'm not one to peer into something that I'm not super familiar with. But I give them the flexibility to pursue pretty much, at this point, any digital banking model that's out there. And even further, like I said in the earlier parts, new models that have not even been imagined so far.
Yeah, great answer. Guys, you have to go back and look at part 2. Kelvin had a great idea around how data and analytics can be used on newer business models for banks. Last question before we take you for a rapid fire round. What can banks do in 2025? 2 or 3 things they can do in 2025. So the probability of success of this transformation improves significantly. What can they do now?
Buy-in, alignment. They need everyone, not just senior leadership, but also the 2 or 3 layers execution downwards to say, yes, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And start having the acceptance that you need to think about execution in a more creative sense. Not just, well, we've always written a BRD and therefore you take our BRD and move on with life, right? How do we create a iterative BRD process whereby you have a quarterly release and you have a regular status update and you have a view of how to solve questions around security as opposed to, let's lock everything up on-prem and never ever have any security threat to our platform ever again. So there are many conversations, many ways to do it, but by and large, alignment is the key.
Okay, so anyone who's looking to start another transformation, get alignment first, is Kelvin's message. Thank you, Kelvin. You have answered a lot of questions, but we are not going to let you go. There is a new segment we are doing, which is called Fire in the Grill, which is our last segment. You should check back. It is a separate video, and then we'll take you and we'll meet you again in Fire in the Grill. Thank you.
Thank you.